Hey everyone, it's Lindsay here. I thought I would just make a video to try to explain the different terms that we're supposed to be looking at today. I know Tim mentioned that we only really need to focus on one, but I'm still trying to kind of understand these terms myself, so I made a few diagrams that I thought I would share with people, hopefully so you can let me know if you think I'm on the right track of understanding these terms and we can help each other understand them better. So this is kind of how I broke it down in my mind. So for ontology, based on what we were discussing, for me ontology is how we see the world or how we sort of understand existence. So that would relate to assumptions that we have, stereotypes, beliefs, and worldview. Don't you love my beautiful drawing? Just a very inaccurate world right there. But yeah, so that's kind of how I understand ontology, and I think it seems to be always changing and evolving as we interact with other ideas. So it's not something that would be stable, but it would be something that's always changing. And then for me, epistemology has to do with, what is knowledge, who determines what is knowledge, and how we know. And then methodology, the way I'm understanding it, is that really has to do with kind of the research itself and how the way that we choose the method or the process or the genres that we choose to collect our data, to represent our data. And then axiology is why we would use that method. So why we value our method, the kind of rules and beliefs that go along with the paradigms that are kind of related to those methods and genres, and how we would justify that in our in how we kind of present our data. So that was kind of like the first diagram that I made, and then I sort of kept building off because I wanted to understand more the connections between these things. So again, ontology is kind of like how we see and understand the world as far as I understand it, and what we think is true shapes our worldviews and vice versa. So how I'm understanding it is that would connect with epistemology because that's what we think and understand as knowledge. So I feel like those two kind of inform one another. Our worldviews will affect what we think is knowledge and what we think is true, and what we think is knowledge and what we think is true is going to affect our worldviews. And then epistemology, I drew kind of an arrow, if you can see, like right there. For me, that connects to methodology in that, what we think is true is probably going to impact the method, the process that we choose, because we're going to want to represent and get at truth and get at knowledge the best way possible. So our beliefs, our kind of assumptions about what is true, are going to affect how we're going to collect data, how we're going to collect information, how we're going to represent it. And that relates to axiology because we justify our methodology through our axiology, if I'm understanding this correctly. So axiology is more kind of like why we choose the methodology we choose. So justifying that, if we're looking at like the paradigms, it would be, or kind of like the conventions of different genres. I know Tim was talking about in quantitative, it's kind of like they have a certain script or format that they have to follow. So I think that would just kind of be more like the values that are associated with the traditions of kind of the methodologies that we choose. Again, just stop me, comment if you don't agree or you don't, if you have different thoughts on what these things are, because I'd like to think I understand them, but I'm definitely still trying to understand them better and grapple with them. So then I was thinking in relation to Han's example about the ghosts, I kind of made this mind map-esque thing to understand it a little bit better. I don't know if it helps anyone else, but I was thinking that kind of like if we were looking at it as if this was a research project, the question might be, are ghosts real? Like, this would be a really basic research project, but just kind of like a really basic question, are ghosts real? And then an assumption that, say, this researcher would have is like, oh yeah, I believe in ghosts. Ghosts are real. Why do I believe ghosts are real? Because I've seen ghosts. So that's based on observations and experiences of what we see in the world. And then also, I feel like the values or worldviews would also be an ontology. So perhaps for this researcher, like, we should help people see and value ghosts. And, you know, I don't know why someone would necessarily want that, but I'm sure that there are different reasons why someone would want it. And then that relates to epistemology. So what I put there is, I think ghosts are real because I have seen them in photos, and photos are literal and true representations of the world. So for me, that kind of links to knowledge and what we know to be true, because implicit in that thought is that the belief that photos are true. So we're then privileging kind of that medium as kind of a way of understanding. So we're having kind of like a belief about kind of external reality and how we can represent it, and that photos can be true. So we're kind of like giving power to photography to say that it is like a credible source of information and knowledge of what is true. I'm not necessarily saying I agree with that, but that could be like an example of a statement that links to epistemology. And then a statement I put under methodology will be, I will examine the question of, are ghosts real, through a qualitative study. After finding data, I will use the blank genre or something like that. So for me, the way I'm understanding methodology links to kind of the paradigms we're talking about and the different type of research that we're talking about. So we're obviously focused on qualitative research, but I mean, I think quantitative would fit under methodology as well. And then genres, I'm seeing them as sort of like subsections or like sub areas of types of research. And then how that links to axiology would be why we choose the methodology. So like, I will use this qualitative method because, you know, I think it will be the most effective in illustrating, you know, my kind of assumptions, and it will connect to my observations and experiences. So it's kind of like a justification of the whole thing. So yeah, that's my understanding of these terms. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure if I understand them, but I'm really interested to see how other people understand it. And yeah, okay, cool. Chat later.